Hello everyone, this is Tetrafolium, and I'm here today to talk about one of the best Pokemon in ADV. This is Metagross, but specifically I want to shed some light on the defensive variants of Metagross, um, particularly the ones that run an Impish nature. You don't see it very often, or really as often maybe as we should. Uh, we can talk about a little bit of the pros and cons of it, but we'll get into it here. Also, we're getting pretty close to 1,000 subscribers, and that's a huge milestone. So please, if you have been watching these videos and you haven't subscribed yet, or if you watch this one and you like it, consider subscribing and we can get to 1,000 subs. So, this is the viability rankings. Metagross number 3 right now. I'm wondering if it's going to get dislodged. As of recording this, there is currently a period for gamers who are good enough, who have the qualifications, to submit their own viability rankings to try to update the things that are going on. So, Metagross being number 3, I don't think it's a super recent development. I know that Gengar was considered top 3 for a very long time in ADV. Metagross has kind of risen up as time has gone on, but I feel like nowadays people are arguing about Pokemon like Blissey as number 3. So the common question of the day here is, who would you rank as number 3 in the tier? Because I'm pretty sure that almost all of us are going to put Tyranitar and Skarmory number 1 or number 2. If you're somebody who does not believe that either Tyranitar or Skarmory is top 2, then you can let that be known as well. But yeah, most of us are probably going to put Tar and Skarm in that top 2 area. Also, if I get to 100 subs, yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago now. That's kind of crazy. If I get to 1,000 subs, I might do a personal viability ranking. I'm probably not going to be able to get to the 1,800 elo that's necessary for having it count towards the community rankings. Congratulations to everybody who has. You're all very good gamers, but me, I'm not quite that good yet, so might not get there. If I do happen to get there, though, then I guess, I mean, it'll be on the community ranking, so that would be cool. Metagross has some of the best base stats in ADV. It's considered a pseudo-legendary Pokemon, which means that it has 600 base stat total, which is tying the mythicals like Jirachi and Celebi. It is a 3-stage evolution, evolves pretty late. There are very few Pokemon that have higher than 600 base stat total. The only one that is not like a box legendary or banned in some way is Slacking. But Slacking is, of course, has a fantastic drawback of Truant that keeps it playable in the UUBL tier, I guess. It is a pretty good Pokemon in ADV, and it is a Pokemon that I have not used yet. I'm kind of scared to use it because it seems like you're taking a lot of shots in the dark on lead with it, but I mean, some people are built for it, so that's fine. The other pseudo-legendary Pokemon, just for those of you who might not know, are Salamence, Tyranitar, and Dragonite. All 4 of these Pokemon are pretty good. Dragonite is a little bit less good. I mean, it's overall actually not that bad. It's just mostly outclassed by Salamence, because Salamence has better stat distribution. But that's what we're going to talk about, is Metagross' stat distribution. So it has really good power, stamina, and skill, all 4 at least. You could go up to 5 stars with power and stamina as well. The speed and the jump, not so good, but that's okay because there are some events like a Ring Drop, Snow Throw, and Block Smash that Metagross is just fantastic at. It's not so good in the racing events, so I don't know if I would field it for the Pokeathlons that require you to do like relay race or things like that. But I mean, that's fine because power, skill, stamina really commonly seen in some of these like strength contests. Here's a gif of Block Smash to remind you what's going on. Feebas obviously is not very good at it. Metagross would be a lot better, so you can get a lot of blocks smashed, I guess, if you're using Metagross. Oh, well, you want to know about its competitive in Gen 3. That's what you came here for? Okay, fine. I guess we'll talk about that too. These are Metagross's base stats. 80 HP, 135 attack, that's really, really high. 130 defense, that's also pretty high. Special attack, 95, not bad, that's usable. Think about a Pokemon like Tyranitar, who makes use of a base 95 special attack. 90 special defense, that's also not bad, and 70 speed. That's a little bit on the slower side, but I mean, you're outspeeding a lot of common Pokemon like Tyranitar and Swampert naturally. Now, you won't always outspeed them because Metagross has some different priorities for what it should be doing with its stats, and speed is very commonly dumped. Like, you don't typically see max speed Metagross that much because it's so advantageous to invest in things like its HP and its defense and special attacks sometimes if you're running that mixed Metagross. But I digress. Let's take a look at these two really high stats though. So with 135, Metagross is tied with Salamence for the second highest base attack in the format. Slacking is number 1 with 160. Technically speaking, Medicham and Marowak are stronger thanks to Pure Power and the Thick Club, respectively. I think maybe Azumarill, I'm not sure. I don't know Azumarill off the top of my head how strong it gets. I think if it's Adamant, it is stronger than Metagross. But, I mean, it's also Azumarill, so I don't know if I would put too much stock into it. Metagross is technically tied for 13th in defense, but you have to consider that some of the Pokemon that are above it are things like Shuckle with horrendous base HP. Even Cloyster only has 50 base HP, which is not fantastic. So, of Pokemon that have 80 base HP or higher, Regirock and Registeel are the only Pokemon that are above Metagross. So that's actually not so bad. Now, I mean, something like Cloyster still technically takes physical hits better because its defense is so much higher. But you also have to weigh it with some of the other properties of Metagross. In particular, its typing. So, Steel and Psychic is a fantastic dual combo in this particular metagame. Now, it's also really good, I believe, in Gens 4 and 5. It would have been good, I assume, in Gen 2 if it existed, but I don't think there were any Steel or Psychic types in Gen 2. I mean, otherwise we would see more examples up here on this screen, right? So, this is a really, really robust defensive type. One of the things that I think I forgot to put on the slide, but I'll mention here, is being a Steel type, you're sand immune, which means that you are gaining leftovers chip healing throughout a battle, regardless of whether there's sand or not, which is really, really important. But in addition to that, look at this spread of type effectiveness. So I did include what you're damaged normally by, because I want to highlight something here. Fighting, Bug, Water, Electric, Ghost, Dark. That is 6 types. Count the resistances with us. Normal, Flying, Rock, Steel, Grass, Psychic, Ice, and Dragon. And then you can also throw in Poison because you're immune to that. That's 8 resistances, 9 if you're going to count the immunity. And Psychic is a quad resist, which, I mean, of all the quad resists, Psychic is not that great, but it does help out in some cases, like, for example, against Celebi. So, not completely useless there. You're only weak to Ground and Fire, and those are 2 of the most common attacking types. But, I mean, I think you're going to take that for all the resistances that you get. And I do think that steel types in general, but Pokemon like Metagross and Jirachi contribute to how commonly used Earthquake and Flamethrower and Fire Blast are. Now, that's not to say that if they didn't exist, people would stop using Earthquake and stop using Fire Blast. But, like, because you can't really hit these Pokemon that well without those moves, like, it's just doubly incentivized that you use them. So, yeah, this is one of the best types in the format. I mean, I don't know if I would say it's the best. Probably Water Ground, I would make the case for being the best. But, I mean, Mono Normal is actually pretty good too. Maybe I'll think about that a little more and see what I come up with for, I don't know, a tier list if you guys want that. If you don't want that, then don't comment about it, I guess. Comment about something else. Comment in general, though, because we need that for the algorithm. Metagross is going to live almost every physical attack in the format. So the most damage a physical attack can do without boosts, I say with boosts on there, that was a typo, without any boosts to the Metagross is Choice Band Ride-On with Earthquake. But Metagross can actually usually survive this if it wants to. So here's the roll. A max attack, Adamant, Choice Band, Ride-On versus our max HP, max physical defense Metagross. It's only a 37.5% chance to OHKO. Now, would I suggest that you run completely maxed HP and defense on Metagross? I don't know about that, but this is just to illustrate the point that if this isn't even a guaranteed OHKO on Metagross, then there is no guaranteed OHKO on Metagross, at least not with a physical attack. Of course, something like a Moltres Fire Blast will be threatening that kill, but you always have a Blissey that you can switch into for that. The only other physical move that can OHKO Metagross is Thick Club boosted max attack Earthquake from Marowak. I guess technically Bone Meringue as well, but I mean, they're for all intents and purposes, they're the same move. But that only has a 12.5% chance to OHKO Metagross, which is kind of insane. Some other Pokemon that you might have thought of are like, what about Donphan? Donphan's got a lot of attack and it's got Stab Earthquake. No, Donphan falls just shy of getting the OHKO on Metagross. I think it does about 98% max, which is it, and that's assuming, of course, that it's Choice Band Donphan, which, I mean, I don't know about you, I have not seen very many Choice Band Donphan on the ladder. Or maybe I have, and it just died to like a Suicune switching in or something, or switching into a Suicune Surf. I don't know. But yeah, that's incredible. And we'll even take a look at some of the strongest booms in the format. So this is +1 max attack Snorlax self-destruct against our Metagross with max HP, max defense. It's only doing 92.3% max. So you actually live, say you step on one layer of spikes and get a leftovers chip heal turn, you will live a self-destruct from Snorlax after all that. And similarly, a max attack Choice Band Metagross Explosion is not even quite doing that much. It does 89%, so we could almost switch into a spike and tank the explosion. If it high rolls, we would die, but that's fine because, once again, if you get that leftovers chip healing turn, you're out of range. So that's really, really good. And I believe Explosion from Metagross is going to do more than Earthquake, so we don't have to worry ourselves about that. I want to take a note of some of the low attack investment benchmarks that Metagross can hit. This is going to be primarily stuff that's below, well, I guess exclusively stuff that's below the 176 that's suggested by the Smogon set. Of course, that's also Adamant boosted 176. We're going to talk about starting from 152. You could go a little higher than this, but the higher you go, with the attack, the more you're incentivized to go for Adamant Nature rather than Impish. Of course, like you can work on your own configurations, try to figure out what benchmarks you're trying to hit on both your physical and your physical offense and defense. But I'm just gonna present to you some of these stuff from 152 down. So 152 attack is going to allow Meteor Mash to 3-hit KO Snorlax without sand, which is a pretty nice benchmark. And of course, the Snorlax we're looking at would be, I believe, Curselax, which has a little bit more native defense investment than Utility Lax. At least if you're using the standard sets. That's maybe not super duper prescient, because Snorlax could just use Curse to boost itself up, but you could also get a Meteor Mash raise to offset that Snorlax getting that boost. So it kind of still matters to a degree, and the 3-hit KO benchmark is pretty useful for Snorlax because Snorlax can use the move Rest, which means that it will be asleep for 2 turns, and Metagross outspeeds, so it will be able to get 3 hits off on the Snorlax. So that's actually pretty good to know. 140 attack is going to allow Earthquake to 2-hit KO a standard Choice Band Metagross. It also allows Rock Slide to 3-hit KO Rest Zapdos if Sand is up. And that's an important benchmark as well, because like I said with Snorlax, that Rest Zapdos, you're going to have 3 turns to hit it. Now, you don't outspeed it, but if you can force it to rest in front of Metagross, you get a turn to hit it with Rock Slide on the turn that it first goes to sleep. So that's kind of important if you're going to be running Rock Slide. 128 attack, Meteor Mash is going to 2-hit KO Modest Blissey in the sand. Good to know. 112 attack, Mash will OHKO a 4 HP Tyranitar after 2 layers of spikes, which is not a super duper real benchmark. I mean, most of the time that you get to 2 layers, you're going to want to go for 3, but there may be cases where you're only able to get 2 layers, and this is important to know, because if 2 layers are up, you know that Tyranitar can't really switch in on Meteor Mash, unless it's like a 252 HP variant of Tyranitar, but then again, how many times is Tyranitar going to be switching in to that kind of Meteor Mash? So your Explosion will one-shot the standard Def Pert at this range as well, so that's pretty good to know. But even if you don't really believe in this 2 layers of spikes roll for Tyranitar, that Boom one-shotting defensive Pert is a pretty big deal. At 96 attack, Boom is going to one-shot a standard utility Celebi. Of course, Celebi could run more defense than the standard utility runs, but that is still pretty good to know. There are some times when you don't really have another great Pokemon to deal with Celebi, and getting that Boom off could be worth it. And utility Celebi is generally going to be the most defensive variant of Celebi. Things like Leech 3 attacks, Calm Mind, Baton Pass are not going to have quite as much defense investment as utility Celebi most of the time. 84 attack is going to allow Rock Slide to 2-hit KO offensive Zapdos without sand. 64 attack will allow Meteor Mash to 2-hit KO a Mixed Mence or a CB Mence, assuming, again, that they're not running any defense investment or HP investment. That's why we're not including Dragon Dance Mence on here, because that usually does run HP investment. 52 attack will allow Rock Slide to one-shot kill Moltres. If you instead want to use HP Rock, you will OHKO after sand damage at the very least. So it's not so bad. Keep in mind that Moltres is bulkier than Charizard, so if we're one-shotting Moltres, we are going to be one-shotting Charizard as well. In fact, just so you know, Rock Slide will one-shot Charizard, or at least the standard Charizard set, the special attacker that you're going to commonly see, with no investment. So that, if you really want a brutally high defense Metagross, know that you would not be punished if you want to use Rock Slide to hit your Charizard switch in. With 20 attack, your explosion will one-shot the standard defensive Milotic, which is, in fact, 252 HP, 252 defense with a plus defense nature, so Milotic can do nothing to survive a Metagross boom, so long as you have at least 20 attack EVs. So, all of this is good to know. If there's something on here, or if there was a calc that you're like, oh, I wonder if Metagross gets this 2-hit KO, or gets this 1-hit KO that you might think it would probably get it with 0 attack investment. There are some other sort of things that you need even more attack investment to get, like, say, bold Blissey rolls outside of sand. But that's not really what we're here for. We're here to talk about these lower attack investments because we're trying to use Metagross's really high defense stat to our advantage. So this is the set that I've come up with. I'm going to use the highest benchmark from the previous slide. So if you're wanting to remind yourself what those offensive benchmarks are because you have a TikTok attention span and you forgot, even though we just got off that slide, you can rewind just a few seconds to look at that previous slide to see what we're going to be able to do with 152 attack investment. But now we can talk about our defensive investment. So we're guaranteed to live 2 Adamant Tyranitar EQs. We're almost guaranteed to do so against Metagross and Salamence as well. They have 1 more base attack than Tyranitar, so that equates to about, I think, 3 more points of attack. So they have, like, basically an extra roll on top that can get the kill on this Metagross, I should say the 2-hit KO on this Metagross. But I mean, even if they get that roll, we do have Protect, so we can help ourselves out here. We'll live 2 0 attack investment Swampert Earthquakes, which, for those of you who are not that familiar with Swampert, might think that sounds like a dumb roll because Swampert's got really high attack. Of course, you invest in its attack. But actually, most Swampert do not invest in their attack. They would put all of their stuff into their HP and defense, sometimes special defense, or if they're a offensive Swampert, they tend to want to have a stronger Hydro Pump, so they put everything into special attack. So we actually, generally speaking, will just live 2 Earthquakes from Swampert. There are some variants of Swampert that will run some attack investment, which can be a problem for us, but needless to say, we're actually pretty good into Swampert. I mean, not really, because we can't hit it, but we could take a hit and then boom on it. So, gives us a little bit of leeway there. We will live a Choice Banded Boom from Metagross with this amount of investment. So that's actually pretty good to know as well. Adamant Dugtrio will deal 85% maximum to us. So even if we take, say, a layer of spikes damage, that Dugtrio is not going to be able to kill us outright. Now, I mean, how often are we going to be exactly at 88% the amount that you take from taking spikes damage? Not really that often. There could be a case where you come in on 3 layers, you get a leftovers chip heal, and then you go for Protect. That would put you at 88. That means that Dugtrio would not be able to revenge kill you if you manage to kill whatever is in front of you. Or, you know, whatever 3 layers plus 2 leftovers chip healing turns. No, you cannot be killed by the Dugtrio, which gives you a chance to go for Meteor Mash or Explosion if you would like to eliminate the Dug. Curslax virtually is going to 4-hit KO us with Earthquake with no boost. That's pretty good to know because that means that we can do a lot. Like, we have a lot of turns to get Meteor Mash raises and the like. Of course, Curse Lax can boost itself, and if it gets 2 boosts, that means that it virtually 2-hit KOs us. But that's good to know because once it gets to 2 boosts, we know that we have one more turn to click Meteor Mash, and then we're going to have to boom after that. So I don't know if that would kill usually. My inclination is that it gets close, but not quite. But you're going to leave the Snorlax really low, so that's probably good enough. And that's also assuming that the Snorlax has taken no damage on the turns that it was going for curses. So Utility Lax will need Earthquake in order to achieve a 3-hit KO on us some of the time. We can still survive 3 Earthquakes from the standard Utility Lax, which runs more attack. But that being said, Utility Lax will a lot of times drop Earthquake. It wants Self-Destruct, it wants a normal type move, usually Body Slam, sometimes Return. And then it has to choose 3 or 2 of the following 3 moves: Earthquake, Focus Punch, and Shadow Ball. If you don't choose Shadow Ball, you cannot hit Gengar, like at all. Like literally, it's immune to the rest of your moves. If you don't choose Earthquake, then you're going to struggle to hit Steel types, particularly Metagross and Jirachi. But if you don't choose Focus Punch, then Skarmory is going to basically farm you. It's going to get up all the spikes that it needs, and then it can roar you around and do really nasty stuff to you. So, a lot of the times they will forego Earthquake in this situation because it's more important for most teams that have Snorlax or a utility Snorlax to be able to threaten Skarmory as well as Gengar. It also is like really nice to have that Focus Punch for Blissey than it is to have a move that might do some damage to Metagross, who's probably just going to blow up on you anyway. So now, that not to say that you should never use Earthquake on Utility Lax. There are plenty of reasons why you might want to. So, like particularly your team's weak to Jirachi. But that's really the long and the short of this set. We do have 4 EVs in speed, which gives us an outspeed on Metagross and Skarmory, who are not investing at all in their speed. Usually Skarmory does also throw 4 EVs into its speed, so I wouldn't bank on outspeeding Skarmory all the time, but at least you could speed tie the standard set, which might be somewhat important. You could always try to find 4 more EVs to put into speed. If you want to do that, what you're probably going to want to do is take from HP, but you also want to replace some of what you take from HP into your defense so that you don't lose out on certain of these defensive benchmarks. You could also take a little bit from your attack if you want to hit one of the other offensive benchmarks that was on the previous slide. That's fine as well, and you could put a little bit more into your speed in that case. Metagross is pretty flexible depending on what you want it to do. So I think that's really nice. Another thing to note here is we do not have Rock Slide or HP Rock. Both of these moves are perfectly fine to put on Metagross. If you are going to put them on, you should put them on over Protect. The reason being is that if you don't have Meteor Mash, well, then you're not Metagross. If you don't have Earthquake, then you're going to struggle against opposing Metagross, which is not exactly great. You also appreciate having a very consistent move to click to finish off some weak Pokemon. Like say, for example, you leave Blissey at really low HP. If you have to rely on clicking Meteor Mash to finish off that Blissey, then 15% of the time, Blissey's just going to heal itself back up. And as you saw from our previous slide, we're not always going to two-shot a Blissey with Meteor Mash. So it's important that you get these consistent rolls to hit and kill Blissey. It's also important that you have this to hit, uh, like I said before, Metagross and Jirachi. An Explosion, I mean, if you're going to drop Explosion on any Metagross set, you're most justified on doing it on a defensive Metagross. Every other Metagross wants Explosion for the sake of momentum, for the sake of trading up. There are a lot of Pokemon that love to switch in on Metagross because they take the combination of Meteor Mash and Earthquake pretty well. For example, Zapdos, Moltres, Suicune, Swampert, Milotic. None of these Pokemon take Explosion at all. Like, if they switch into a Boom, they're dead. And that can be really important because you might have a win condition that needs that Pokemon eliminated. Like, take, for example, if you have Suicune. Well, you don't want to deal with a Zapdos, necessarily. It's also nice to not have to deal with opposing Suicune because Suicune versus Suicune CM wars are really, really cringe. And it oftentimes just comes down to whoever had more PP when it started. So that's not fantastic. I mean, there's also Roar as well to consider. But yeah, Metagross can resolve some of those issues before they become issues for you. So that's quite nice. So Protect is the most droppable. Protect is really nice to scout choice banded moves. It's really nice to get some chip healing on Metagross. Because it has so much defense, there are a lot of like near 2-hit, near 3-hit KOs that you can go for Protect and erase the chance that you would get 2 or 3-hit KO'd. I mean, of course, crit can always happen, but we're gonna assume we live in a perfect world where we never get crit. So, yeah. If you're gonna drop Explosion, like, I don't know. You could drop Explosion for Toxic if you're more interested in being able to hit these defensive switch-ins to Metagross, like Zapdos, like Swampert, like Suicune, force that to rest eventually. But you are losing a lot of potency against certain threats, like, for example, Refresh Milotic or Refresh Swampert, if you choose to not have Explosion on your Metagross. So yeah, you could drop Protect. Whether you go for Rock Slide or HP Rock should be a question of the offensive benchmark that you're trying to hit. So if you're trying to one-shot kill something like Moltres, you might want to check to see if you have enough attack investment if you're going to opt to go for HP Rock. HP Rock is really nice because it doesn't miss, but like it is lower in its base power. It also messes with your IVs. For example, you can't have 31 speed IVs if you have HP Rock. So if you're trying to do some speed creeping, that can make things a little complicated for you. So yeah, if you're going to mess around with HP Rock in particular, I would make some adjustments to the spread so that you maintain what you want. It might be the case that you don't care about the speed at all. So, I mean, you don't have to make very much changes, but that is basically the long and the short of this particular Metagross idea. Now we're on to the team structure. So this is Impish Metagross V5. So V5, of course, is that Scarm Bliss Claydol with Dugtrio. And then the fifth Mon is usually Milotic, but in this case I'm going with Suicune. I would argue if it's Milotic or Suicune or maybe Vaporeon in that slot, then it still counts as V5 in my book. So if you're like a V5 purist, then maybe you disagree with me, but I'm a little bit more liberal with what you can do with that defensive water slot. So V5 is a fantastic defensive underpin. It can do a lot just with these 5, but it appreciates an additional Snorlax or Suicune check, and Metagross will act as that for us, kind of. I mean, it's more so a Snorlax check, because it's threatening to beat down with Meteor Mash. Snorlax can't really kill you back, and you can always boom if things get hairy. Whereas with Suicune, you're basically forced to boom if you want to do anything against that Suicune, but there could be a case where they end up as last mon Suicune, and you can chain booms with Claydol and Metagross, or you could just boom with the Metagross. If you don't even quite finish off the Suicune, you still have Dugtrio, which should be strong enough to get there on the Suicune. Sometimes not, but that's... Well, actually, I don't know, because you do a lot of damage with boom with Metagross. If it doesn't happen to be the case that you can do that, boom with Metagross into the Dugtrio, for more broadly any Pokemon that you're trying to finish off in the last slot, then you could at least try to go to something like Blissey or Suicune and threaten in a different way. But yeah, we're going to make a lot of defensive pivots with this team. This is definitely a defensive spikes idea. The goal is to keep the counter to our opponent's win condition into the end game. So if our opponent is relying on something like Raikou to win the game, our counter to Raikou, well, our best counter to Raikou is probably Blissey. Claydol and Dugtrio can certainly do a lot to Raikou, depending on the situation. Like, Raikou is easily revenge killed by Dugtrio. Although, I think the team pace that I'm going to share has a slower Dugtrio. You can always alter that as well if you so wish. Claydol can do a pretty good chunk to it as well with Earthquake. But Blissey with Seismic Toss is going to be one of the most robust check or counters to Raikou. Basically, they have to get really, really good crit or Paraluck to beat Blissey, especially if you position yourself well for it. So yeah, and a lot of these Pokemon that could win the game are going to be checked by Blissey. But there are some where maybe Metagross is actually the check to it, and you need to preserve Metagross for that. So that's kind of what this next point is about. Ideally, you want to eliminate the Suicune checks with Boom, but mash as much as you possibly can before Metagross health is too low. And you can also certainly save the Metagross if you need it to beat something like a Last Mon Tyranitar, or potentially like a Last Mon Heracross, who, like, say we've already lost Skarmory, we don't have Dugtrio anymore. You need that Boom to take out Heracross. This could be a case where you need that Metagross. So yeah, don't be so boom happy with an Impish Metagross. We're ultimately trying to be greedy, get the 2-for-1. Sometimes you could even get more than that, depending on how weak their team is to Meteor Mash, but I digress. If Magneton traps and eliminates our Metagross, then we can counter trap with Dugtrio, and that will allow us to keep Skarm late into the game. A lot of teams that are relying on Magneton to trap Skarmory don't have fantastic means to eliminate Skarmory otherwise. So that means that if they kind of take the bait and eliminate our Metagross, maybe we have a situation where against a certain lead, we took a lot of damage, like, I don't know, we took a Fire Blast or from Ment or an Earthquake from Tyranitar, and that puts us in range to get killed by Magneton. If they go for that, we have Dugtrio to eliminate, and we have the whole Skarm just free to do whatever it wants in the game. I will say with a team like this, it is more important to get one spike and preserve Skarmory's health than it is to get all 3 spikes. The idea with Skarmory is it's going to find a lot of entry points versus things that can't really hit it that well, like Snorlax, for example. So we want Skarmory to be around to harass those things and, you know, get drill peck damage, stop them from being able to curse up and try to win the game. So yeah, more important to be a check to those things than it is to get the spikes. But certainly you do want to get one spike down to stop your opponent from being able to switch around. So that's going to do it for the little presentation part of our video. We're going to go into the replays here, and we're going to switch up the music. So I feel like it's a XD Gale of Darkness kind of day. I think a prominent speedrunner Worster is playing through the game casually right now. Maybe he's going to be speedrunning it. Who knows? But you should go look him up if you're interested in that kind of content. I do think Worster's a pretty good, entertaining player, particularly with his speedruns. I'm not sure how his like let's play walkthrough type of content is, but I'm sure it's fine. But since we're in that mood, let's open up with the first battle theme that you get in XD Gale of Darkness. This is so sick as a first battle theme. Like, and also the battle that you get, I think it's your Metagross versus a Salamence, both level 50, which is like more Pokemon games should open up like that. That would get me so hyped. Now, granted, it is kind of not that hype to go from having a level 50 Metagross in your first battle to getting a level 5 or so EV. That's not great, but I mean, getting to play with Metagross at all is super sick. So that's fine with me. Also, I don't know about you guys, but this song kind of reminds me a little bit of the Rick and Morty theme song at parts. I'm sorry if you can't unhear that now, but we're going to move on. All right, so Tetrafolium I'm playing on my main, not my alt, which kind of became my main for a little while. We're up against a Lead Jolteon. Lead Jolteon is not super duper common, but it usually has like a sub-pass idea. Not always, but sometimes it does. It's more likely, I would think. We get Thunder Wave, but we're going to take the Earthquake and kill. And now Dugtrio's in. But Dugtrio can't kill us. Even if that was Adamant Doug, it's not killing us. So we managed to get a 2-for-1 here. And then I'm going to go for Boom on this Linoon. But I get full paralyzed. I could have got a 3-for-1 right there. But alas, Linoon is going to Belly Drum up and get a fat Shadow Ball on us. But Skarmory can come in and roar this Linoon away. Linoon does not have a move to hit us. And we're going to see a Jinx. This is... I don't know what this team is. Like this... Where are we on the ladder? It's a 1500 gamer. If they got here with this, that's kind of impressive, actually. Maybe there's something to this team. But a Jinx is not going to do very well against our Blissey. We've already sleep sacked, so we don't have to worry about getting lovely kissed away here. I'm just going to Seismic Toss down. There's no Dugtrio to worry about, so my Blissey is likely going to be fine. Linoon goes for Thunder Wave. Comment down below if you knew that Linoon got Thunder Wave. I didn't. Didn't really matter, because I can just get a spike up anyway. Celebi will come in and Calm Mind. This is crazy. This is like Lead Jolteon, Calm Mind pass, and you have like Linoon instead of Metagross as your like Blissey check, which is okay. I don't really hate it. I don't think it's that good, but it's kind of interesting. This Celebi, I knew it was going to go for Calm Mind because I don't think my opponent can really make progress otherwise. So I just go to Dugtrio there and I get the trap and elimination. And now this is looking like a really, really nice game for Blissey to win. We can go for Seismic Tosses. I do 27% with the Seismic Toss, which is indicating to me that this is a more offensive Suicune. The Suicunes that tend to run like more defensive are going to have a lot of HP investment, so Seismic Toss is going to be doing about 25%, so keep that sort of stuff in mind. I did get a second spike up, in particular because I wanted Linoon to never be able to switch in again, and I managed to roar it in, which is really nice. Blissey will come in. It's going to take the Lovely Kiss, maybe. In fact, we don't take it. So I'm going to switch to Claydol, Sleep Sack that, and then Blissey should be fine to just Seismic Toss down on this Jinx. As long as we don't get frozen. We get frozen, but we thaw, so that's okay. And now, last Mon Suicune. You have to be careful with these last mon Suicune situations. I am going to go aromatherapy, make sure that this Claydol is awake, because my idea for how to beat this Suicune is going to be to force it to rest, come in with Claydol, explode, and then Dugtrio should be able to finish it. Alright, so on this turn I can go right to Claydol. If my opponent opts to go for Surf, they lose because Dugtrio just comes in, outspeeds, and kills it. And if they go for Rest there, I have plenty of turns to get the Boom and Earthquake off. And I didn't even really need all those turns. We just simply win with the Dugtrio. Next game. Should I try this? Caipriana de Mijo. I think that's Portuguese. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I know a little bit of Spanish, but my Portuguese very, very not good, so. Metagross is going to be in. Click a Earthquake on us. That seems to be banded damage from the Metagross. And now we can just simply go to Skarmory. I'm going to get a Spike up. Sometimes you'll see a lead Choice Band Metagross with a Magneton, but not always. A lot of times, gamers are using the Houdini idea to be their sort of Skarm elimination angle, and then the rest of their team has good enough moves to hit Skarmory that even if you don't manage to get the Houdini off, that you can do some other stuff. So one of the reasons why I like having a Metagross that just survives CB Boom is that if we end up against a lead Houdini and they go for Boom on us, we'll survive. They can come into whatever Pokemon. At the very least, we'll see what they're going to do. And allow ourselves to get an appropriate switch if they revenge kill our Metagross. Sometimes we can even save our Metagross, and it could do something later in the game. So that's really good. Zapdos is going to try to predict maybe a Swampert gets a critical hit on our Skarmory, our Blissey. Not that it really matters. I did anticipate that our opponent would switch to something like a Snorlax that couldn't handle Skarmory, because usually the things that counter Blissey well don't do that well into Skarmory and vice versa. So I will get a Spike up on this Snorlax, but it goes for Fire Blast. Does not quite half to us. I can go for Protect, get a little bit more chip healing here, and I think that it's probably prudent for me to switch because it's more important to save that Skarmory health than it is to get the third Spike. I am going to switch back to Skarmory though, and the Snorlax booms. But that's actually really nice for us because Skarmory barely lives that, which means that we can use it as a sack later. I'm going to double into Metagross here on this turn, and I take a Mega Horn for... Wait. How much was that? %, and it gets a Boom off to kill Heracross. That is incredible to me. I was not sure that we would take that little from Mega Horn, but the fact of the matter is we tanked that shit like crazy, and that's how dead Heracross for its troubles. Now we can simply just switch around. It seems like the only thing that is really stopping my Blissey from just hard-walling the entire team is this Metagross. I do manage to get a Seismic Toss on it. Now it's a dire situation. This Metagross basically has to go for Boom if it wants to get any more value, and I can sack off my 10% Skarmory there. My opponent does have Tyranitar, so they introduce another Blissey check into the game, but I know you have to go for Dragon Dance if you want to make good progress on my Blissey, and I managed to outspeed and KO with the Dugtrio. I'm pretty sure this is a faster Dugtrio variant. You know what? I'm changing it back. I think that it is really nice to have a Dugtrio that outspeeds Jolly Tyranitar for this kind of structure. If you want to try a slower Dug with more bulk to help yourself out against Blissey, you can certainly do that. But I think this team has enough defensive pieces that you can stall out most Blissey. So I'm just going to surf down on the Swampert. I take a critical hit from Earthquake, which is not great. It's going to force me to rest. I could have probably lived another Earthquake, but better to not risk getting crit, right? I'm going to switch to Claydol, anticipating a switch to Zapdos, but it doesn't come. I'll go for Earthquake. I dodge a Hydro Pump, which is really, really nice. I think I would have lived it anyway. But, I mean, we can't be for sure. I go for Earthquake again, catching the Protect, which allows me to go for Explosion pretty safely on the next turn. The sort of thought process is, if they switch to Zapdos, it's probably dead to Explosion. Zapdos can sometimes survive it, but with Sandstorm, I don't think it would survive. And if I catch the Swampert, well, it's just dead. So I have Pokemon that can beat Lastmon Pert and Pokemon that can beat Lastmon Zapdos. Blissey is kind of the Pokemon that does that for both situations. And yeah, there we go. Like Blissey in the end game, it's so hard to beat. Like, look at that. There were 1, 2, 3, 4 physical attackers and a mixed attacker, and Blissey still kind of just gets so much value here, especially when the spikes and the sand are up, because all those Pokemon switch in, they take a Seismic Toss, and if they're not sand immune, they're not chip healing up. So, yeah, like, Snorlax, is it a Blissey check? Yes, but is it a counter? If there's spikes and sand up, definitely not. Because Blissey can just chip that thing all the way down. Now we're up against Basil Berry. That's actually a cool name. I like that a lot. Lead Zapdos is going to Baton Pass, and I'm going to go straight to Blissey. There are some arguments, maybe, when you're doing V5 structures, particularly ones where you have like a lead that loses to Zapdos, whether you should be going Blissey or you should be going Claydol first. I think Blissey is going to be better at threatening the Zapdos out, whereas Claydol is going to be better at not allowing super duper scary things like Metagross and Snorlax and even Suicune to hit the field because it's got that boom. But in this case, Blissey worked out okay for me. There's also a possibility with a Zap team that they could be Zap Dug, but I do have Bold Blissey with Ice Beam. I should be okay into Dug. I mean, if it's bulky with Beat Up, then yeah, I can take out my Blissey. And that's not good. But at the very least, we have some follow-up ideas. Claydol would stop a Dugtrio if you're scared of Zap Dug, so maybe give both a try. Definitely try that Claydol out. It should be a little bit more safer. More safer, I say. It's a little redundant. I get a Spike up as the Skarmory comes in. I was going to get a second Spike because Skarmory's not really threatening me that much. But it is a Taunt Skarm. I'm going to switch back to see maybe what this Skarmory has. If it has Toxic or Drill Peck. Or if it would switch out. If it switched out, then I could get a second Spike really nicely there. Instead, I'm just going to go back to Suicune and go for Surf. We managed to force the Blissey in. Blissey goes for Toxic as I go to Skarmory, and I'm going to get my second Spike up. Now back to Blissey, who's going to take a Thunderbolt pretty well. My opponent, despite having Skarm Bliss of their own and Zapdos, they're not doing a fantastic job navigating my Skarm Bliss idea. And I'm just going to opt to beat down this Skarm with my Blissey Seismic Toss. I will go for Ice Beam in case my opponent wants to switch. It also threatens a freeze on Skarmory, which could be good. I am just going to Seismic Toss again, though. My opponent's switching to Blissey. About to take another Seismic Toss. And this is about as good a turn as any to go to Skarmory, I think. And we're going to get the third Spike up. So we'll have to see if our opponent has a spinner. If they don't, then this is looking kind of dire. They might be Superman. It's possible. And these 3 layers are not that great for us, but at the very least, it's going to put some pressure on Blissey. I go for Ice Beam as Skarmory switches in. Now it's pretty low. It's not quite in seismic toss range though. It could get that third spike up, but we still have Claydol in the back. So we have plenty of opportunity to get a spin off, but we don't need to risk it right now. Especially this Skarmory having Toxic. We don't want to get Toxic on Claydol so early. I managed to get a Meteor Mash on a Swampert switch in, and I go for Protect to get some chip healing on Metagross, but my opponent is going to switch to Skarmory, which I can stay in on, get another Meteor Mash, start beating the Skarmory down, and I got a lot of healing on this Metagross. It's at 81%. Now I'm going to double to Claydol, anticipating my opponent to want to switch, but in fact they stay into Toxic. So now my Claydol is Toxic, which is not fantastic, but we still have Aromatherapy on Blissey. We should be okay. I'm going to go to Suicune, get some chip healing, and I'm threatening to kill with Surf. I'll get 33% on this Zapdos, looking more and more likely to be an offensive Zapdos. Goes for Baton Pass and gets the sand up for us, which is fantastic because now the Zapdos can't be chip healing itself. Also, this Blissey, every time it switches in, it's going to have to click Soft Boiled because it just is not getting that chip healing from leftovers. They reveal Last Mon Scizor. That's actually really strange. I'll go for Drill Peck, trying to get some damage on it if it tries to go for something like, I don't know, Swords Dance. Drill Peck does break the sub the first time, but it doesn't get the next sub, which is not cool. I'm going to go for Roar, in case this Scizor tries to go for Swords Dance. Unfortunately, that does mean that the Scizor, when it comes back in, it'll probably be on 1 HP, and it will have a very strong reversal, so that's not fantastic for us. I'm going to come in with Suicune to take the Hydro Pump. I get critically hit, which is not fantastic, but that is going to use up 2 Hydro Pump PP, and if this Swampert runs out of Hydro Pump, then it just cannot do anything versus Skarmory anymore. It could try to freeze, I guess, with Ice Beam. I'm going to go for Rest here, as my opponent catches that by going to Skarmory. I'll go to Blissey. I probably could have stayed in to burn some Sleep Turns, though. But I didn't necessarily want to get Roared, and I wanted to get a Aromatherapy off so that our Claydol is still good into this. Are we still in the mid-game here? I guess we are. Like, not a lot of pieces have fallen yet, but my opponent is looking really worse for wear. 6 Pokemon alive, but all of them are chipped pretty heavily. I can go for a spin on this Skarmory, who is going to Toxic us. Think about how much better this team would be if this Scizor was instead a Gengar, and it was stopping my Claydol from spinning every time. But then again, it's Big 5 Zapdos, and there are a lot of Big 5 Zapdos haters out there who think that it's not all that good a team. I'm not going to comment too much on it. I haven't played enough Big 5 structures to really nail down which one's the best. I would imagine Starmie is the best 6th, but I digress. I go for Meteor Mash, and that would have caught this Scizor really nicely, but I miss, and it goes for a +1 reversal, and that only does 67, which is not nearly enough to kill this Metagross. And with my leftovers healing, I mean, even if I didn't have the leftovers healing, I can survive stepping on a spike again, but I can also go for Protect and just continue to chip heal because, I mean, why not? Like, I'm fine with that. I will go to Blissey, who takes a Thunderbolt and gets paralyzed, so that's not good. If my opponent opts to stay in, they could try to fish for the full Paraturn and kill off my Blissey. This is maybe why we should be going to Claydol more often on Zapdos, because Zapdos can just hacks our Blissey and win. But now I'm going to go to Claydol after I've gotten rid of its Toxic, and I can chip down on the Zapdos. Instead, I'm actually going to go for a Rapid Spin. Test to see if it's got hidden power. I'll go to Blissey here because that is a good switch into Skarmory if that wants to come in versus us. Seismic Toss, not quite going to kill the Skarmory, but it is really low. They're going to opt to just hard switch to Tyranitar here as I go for a Seismic Toss, and I do 26%, which means that I will kill this Tyranitar if I want it. But assuming that the Tyranitar is going to go for a Rock Slide, and I don't want to get flinched or crit and lose my Blissey, I am going to go straight to Dugtrio, which should outspeed and just kill the Tyranitar. This is looking great for me. I can go to Blissey on this Skarmory, who... Alright, it gets a Toxic off. That's fair. I'll go for Seismic Toss because if the Skarmory tried to cheekily go for a Spikes, we would kill off the Skarm, and then we don't have to play around with our Claydol spinning anymore. We could just go for a Boom on Swampert or Blissey or Zapdos and win the game. But we can't really go for that as long as opposing Skarmory is still up. So yeah, this is like a longer, grinded out kind of team style. So if you're into that sort of stuff, I highly recommend you try this. But if you're not into that kind of stuff, then I don't know. Wait for the next Metagross video. I'm sure we'll be talking about some Metagross offense when we get to it. Blissey just taking some T-bolts here. Opposing Blissey will come in. I mean, the thing to consider here is every time this Blissey comes in on these spikes, it's a step closer to having to heal. And you only have 13 more soft boileds. So this is a legitimate win condition for me, is that I run this Blissey out of soft boileds. Also, being able to kill the Swampert is really nice if we can manage. I will Roar, so now it can never switch in. Or if it does switch in, it's a Spike Sack. Opposing Skarmory will get Taunt off on me, which is not cool. I can go to Claydol, which is threatening to spin. It's also just going to chip heal up a little bit. It's offset a bit by this Toxic, but we're using up these Toxic PP. If Skarmory runs out of Toxic PP, then essentially a lot of my Pokemon could just come in and play for the Skarm beatdown and not have to worry about anything. My opponent's actually going to go for a Taunt here, catching my Aromatherapy. That's fine, but they don't have Protect, so they're dead to this Seismic Toss. And their best response for my Blissey is their own Blissey, which is about as free as Aromatherapy turn as I could see. And now that I have 6 Pokemon alive, you're down to your last 3. I have 2 Booms. Like, this is basically just going to be clockwork from here. I'll go Skarmory. Skarmory is actually like completely useless to me in this endgame, so I'm just gonna use it to Drill Peck down on the Blissey. Blissey's going to opt to Soft Boiled there. That's probably a turn I should have roared, in fact, to get the potentially get the Swampert kill. But we're gonna sacrifice our entire Skarmory here so that we can go to Claydol. This is a free turn for me to click Rapid Spin. Blissey will opt to go for a Soft Boiled, but now I can Boom because I'm either going to kill. Oh, I guess I don't go for the Boom there. They could go Swampert there. No, actually. No, it wouldn't have mattered because Swampert dying ends the turn, so I could have simply exploded there. If they go Swampert, okay, well that wastes the turn, but I'm still in with Claydol and I can Boom. So I don't know. I went to Blissey here. It's not a bad play. It's just like doesn't really do anything for me. But now I can go back to Claydol, and yeah, we can go for Explosion here, and that's a dead Blissey. Now we can go to our own Blissey, and Blissey should be able to 1v1 this final Zapdos here. We don't quite get the kill. That's kind of fine with me. I will switch to Dugtrio here because, for one, if my opponent goes for Thunderbolt, then I can just win the game with Dugtrio. For 2, if I got insanely bad luck and parried all the way down, then I could maybe lose my Blissey there. So at the very least, I would get an additional turn of Blissey to do something by curing the paralysis and stacking off the Dugtrio, but they don't click HP Grass or Ice to predict that, so I simply will just win with my Dugtrio. Alright, so this is the last game, so we're going to change the music up to be a little more climactic. It's the final boss theme of Pokemon Battle Revolution. Fantastic music in this game as well. All the same composers, I think, as Pokemon Colosseum and XD, so that's really cool. But I love the orchestration in Battle Revolution. It feels like it has evolved to the next step. Not to say that I don't like the funky techno beats of Battle Sim, but like, come on, I'm a sucker for these trumpet melodies. I mean, I used to play it in wind ensemble when I was in high school, so you know, I have an ear for this sort of stuff. I guess. Kind of lost it though. It's like riding a bicycle. You don't use it, you'll lose it. Actually, that's not true. That's not what they say about bicycles. It's like learning a language. Okay, so that Metagross will reveal itself to be banned. I go for my Earthquake, which does over 50% to it, which is really nice. They switch to Suicune on my Protect turn, and I will switch to Skarmory, anticipating Metagross to come in. I'm going to go for Protect to stop Metagross from being able to click something like Boom on me, and I'll get my Spike down. I have plenty of switch-ins to Meteor Mash. Suicune has been my healthiest of them, so I will go to Suicune. Now I will just take my Surf damage, anticipating that something that beats Suicune will come in. At least we'll get some chip there. And Snorlax is going to go for a Focus Punch on me. I'm playing this game like my opponent does not have Magneton. And it's working out for me. If my opponent did have Magneton, I could be punished for some of these Skarm plays that I'm making, but it's okay. I go for Drill Peck here, anticipating my opponent to want to go for Focus Punch, and I critically hit them. And I go for Protect to try to get some chip healing here. I'm going to switch to Suicune because I don't want this Suicune to get too far ahead with its Calm Mind boosts, and I'm just going to Roar. They reveal Regice there, which is interesting. This is almost like a double blob idea with Snorlax plus Regice. And I will go into Metagross because it's my most expendable Pokemon to a Metagross Boom. If this Metagross went for something like Earthquake instead, then I could revenge kill it quite easily with Dugtrio. But now we're going to see a Claydol switch in. So against Claydol, I will go to Skarmory, mostly because I can just chip heal back up. I don't think my opponent would want to Boom right there, so because I could just Protect. So I will go for a Spike. And then I'm chip healing this Skarmory back up a lot. Like, when people say Skarmory is top 2 in this format, this is like a big reason why. This Skarmory was at 12%. Now it's back up to 46%. Regice is not going to be able to do too much to me. It's actually kind of funny how similar our structures are with that lead Metagross, Suicune, Claydol. And Regice, Snorlax are kind of acting as Blissey in this case. So last Mon, I'm kind of anticipating that it would be Dugtrio. I'm just going to Seismic Toss, anticipating that the Snorlax wants to go for Focus Punch on a switch to my Skarmory. But I am going to switch and take a Boom there, which is not fantastic for me. Claydol is going to come in and basically get a Rapid Spin off for free. I can't stop it, so that sucks. I will go for a Calm Mind. I know will live a Boom from Claydol. I actually live it really well. And they have Salamence last. That actually makes a lot more sense than Dugtrio. Wow, that does a lot for hidden power flying there. But not enough, as I can go for Ice Beam. I have to be careful about my Blissey health, though, because this is my best answer to Salamence. So, don't want to take too much there. I actually get critically hit with the Surf. Does 39%, but we heal just out of range there. I can go for Soft Boiled. My opponent's going to need some more crits to really beat down on this Blissey. My idea here is to force this Suicune to have to rest so that I can go to Claydol and threaten the Boom. Or I could even go to Suicune and roar it away, which honestly is probably even better. But because I think my Suicune's faster, because I am speed creeping, in fact, I'm speed creeping defensive Jirachi with this Suicune. Most other defensive Suicune don't go quite that high. I should be okay to go for a Surf here. I do 34%, that's not great. But because I don't die to a crit, I will go for another Surf. But now I'm dead to crit. I stay in anyway, which is maybe not the play. I go for Roar to sort of force out that Salamence. I do live another hidden power flying raw as long as they don't crit. They go for a Dragon Dance there. They're taking advantage of my bad plays, basically. But as long as I don't get crit, I should be able to kill that Salamence with Ice Beam. My opponent is not going to risk that, and instead going to switch to Bliss or Suicune. I'm the one who switched to Blissey. I still have plenty of Seismic Tosses, so I can try to toss down on this Suicune, force it to rest again. Sort of the end game that I'm playing for is that this Suicune has less PP than my Suicune when we both go down to basically last Mon Suicune. This Suicune has not gone for Roar at all. It's possible that this is a Ice Beam Suicune. I do manage to get an Aromatherapy off, as they were willing to lose the entire Suicune there, which is kind of crazy. But Aromatherapy is going to help me use my own Suicune faster here. Oh, they go for Sleep Talk, so they're actually Crocune. They go for Sleep Talk again there, which is, I don't know why. Did they miscount those turns? I'm not sure. Maybe they were just trying to waste some PP, but that doesn't make sense when they're going for Surf here. Basically, my opponent is trying to get a Surf critical hit, but I don't think that +3 Surf crit kills Suicune, or at least it doesn't kill my Suicune anyway. But my opponent is just going to allow me to get all the way up to plus 10 million. And then they're going to try to sack the Mence off there. I will go for Roar first. And then they're going to go back to Mence, as I can go for Surf. And yeah, now it's Suicune versus Suicune, basically. Since this Suicune doesn't have Roar, I can pretty safely kind of just PP stall with my own Suicune here. I'm going to go for Rest at 95% because I want to use less PP than my opponent does. And Rest is 2 turns where I'm not going to be clicking any moves. They're going to go all the way up to plus 10 million, basically. And I'm going to start clicking Roar. Roar's a useless move in this situation, but I identify that what I need to do to win this game is to just have more Surfs than my opponent does at the end of this game, so I can chip them down while they're going for Struggle. My opponent is kind of in the same boat here. The problem for them is that they have used more PP than I have, and yeah, they don't. And with only 16 Surfs remaining, at least that's what's being displayed here. That means they have a maximum 8 Surf clicks into my Suicune. They're going to have to crit 2 of them. So yeah, I'm gonna put this on hyper fast because you kind of get the idea here. ADV LT1, that is the prefix used for players who are trying to get the ladder tour qualifications. You have to get, I think, to 1750 with a new account that starts with this prefix here. My opponent, who's now clicking surf, they could have clicked through their sweet talks, but I mean, I think they kind of just figured. I mean, I even asked them in the chat why they don't go for sleep talk first, but I think they're figuring that they have to get the crit to win the game, because if they don't, they will lose. And that was the turn I think that they ran out of surfs, so they have no way to win the game. They can't touch my Dugtrio. I can just surf. Basically, once this Pokemon runs out of rests, I can just surf down on it, chip it all the way down. I could go to Blissey and use up the rest of my seismic tosses, and then I can go Dugtrio and Earthquake down. I mean, I don't even have to do all that, but it's a one end game for me. But they were pretty close there. They were at 1688. It's actually, when I hover over them, 1741. So I think they were like multi-queuing, maybe, to try to get to that 1750. And it was right before the cutoff for the week. And I beat them, so I'm gatekeeping in a sense. 30 elo, it's really hard to get that back when you're above 1650. So I'm sorry to whoever this is, but you know, we're all playing to win. I think you would not be satisfied if I just gave you the, or actually maybe you would be satisfied because you get to play in the tournament, but yeah, I don't know, I shouldn't speak for my opponent here. But this has been a fun ride. I really like this fat Metagross. I've kind of been on a fat wave, as it were, playing a lot of fat teams. V5, of course. The Scar and Bliss Claydol structure is just really, really solid. But yeah, there are plenty of things you can do with this team. If you want to instead run a Choice Band Metagross in the lead, that is a really common variant of V5. The idea with that one is that you're supposed to reveal to your opponent that you're Choice Band and you're mashing. And that's going to bait their Magneton to come in to eliminate your Metagross. So then you can go to Dugtrio, eliminate their Magneton, and now you have your Skarmory pretty free for the rest of the game. A lot of Magneton teams don't have a great way to deal with Skarmory if Magneton can't get it done. So that's a really nice bait if you want to try that. You could also try Magneton in the Dugtrio slot if you would like. That would help you out against particularly Skarmory. I've also seen defensive Jirachi in that slot. You can really do a lot of things. You can even try Milotic over Suicune. I don't know if I would try it necessarily for this particular configuration of the team with the Impish Metagross and the Dugtrio, because then you're like super duper lacking in a win con, and a lot of end games will probably get really, really stally, and if you're up against opposing stall, you might not be able to win. But there's just a lot you can do with V5, and like V5-ish teams. So I implore you to explore. I mean, there's so much that you can learn about this metagame by trying out so many different things. And yeah, I just think that we should all give some of these a shot. Please like and subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. If you've made it this far, you like at least a little bit of the content. I'm at least a little bit of an earworm for you, and I'm posting videos at least one a week. I think usually two. So if you want that sort of like put it on in your pocket and do your chores or do work or whatever content, then please subscribe.